Coming up, Delta II launches SMAP.
Spaceport America is up for sale.
And we have a live interview with Dave Masten of Masten Space Systems. Stay tuned. Tomorrow begins right now. Welcome to Tomorrow, episode 8.03 for Saturday, January 31st, 2015. My name is Benjamin Higginbotham. I'm joined by Dave Masten. This is Dave Masten.
Hello.
Hi. And before we get to talking to Dave, I wanted to give a huge shout out to all of the patrons of Tomorrow who have helped to make this specific episode happen. These are the people who have contributed at least $10 to this episode. We are a crowdfunded show, and every single dollar helps. You don't have to contribute $10. You can do $1, 50 cents, $3, but there are different reward levels, and this is the top tier. For more information on how you can become a patron of Tomorrow, head up over to patreon.com/TMRO. Dave, I'm clearly flustered in your presence.
I don't know why.
Here. So, before we've had you on the show many times, and before we get into all your cool plans for world domination, who is Masten Space Systems?
So, Masten Space Systems is a small, very small startup launch systems and space systems company. We've doing a whole ton of stuff. I don't even know where to go right now with that.
What's the coolest stuff you're doing?
The coolest stuff we're doing right now is the XS-1 program with DARPA and the Lunar Catalyst program with NASA.
So let's talk about the XS-1 program with DARPA. You're making a stage for what? Tell me what the program is.
So the DARPA XS-1 program is to develop a fully reusable booster that can actually do 10 flights in 10 days. So that's the reusable and operability parts.
Rapid reusable, not just not shuttle reusable, which is refurbishable.
Yeah, not refurbishable, but this is, you go fly it, you bring it back, you fly it again.
Like an airplane.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Airplane. We're demonstrating airplane-like operations.
For space, though.
For a space launch vehicle.
You make that sound like that's just not like. Obviously, we have this for airplanes, so we should have this for space. But it's not easy. I mean,
obviously we have it for airplanes. We have it for automobiles. We have it for railroads. We have it for small EDL test vehicles, which is something we've been doing for a number of years now.
EDL being entry, descent, landing.
Yes, yes. That's. We just figured, okay, well, this is just a scale up of what we've been doing.
All right, and then your other program with NASA.
So Lunar Catalyst is a no funds exchange space act agreement kind of program where NASA's basically doing a lot to help us in terms of actually developing some of the technologies and actually landing stuff on the moon. So we're actually building lunar landers, and not just terrestrial demonstrators of landers, but actual lunar landers.
Which leads me into your shirt, Moon First. I assume you're talking Moon First, Moon versus Mars. So let's start there. Why?
Yeah, well, it's not Moon versus Mars. It's Moon and Mars.
Okay, but you got to start somewhere.
Let's go to the Moon first. Let's do some things. We don't know how humans behave in partial gravity. Mm-hmm. The Moon is only 3 days away. We can figure some of this stuff out. There's the basics of living away from Mother Earth is probably better done 3 days away rather than 9 months away or 2 years away.
Would be
depending on your orbital characteristics at the time the incident occurs. So yeah, that's and then also on top of that, you have certain advantages. In order to get to Mars, you might want to establish some routine ISRU, basically in situ resource utilization, mine the moon for some important materials like, hydrogen, oxygen, rocket propellants.
But Dr. Zubrin, who is all, he is like narrowly focused on Mars. He's one of the points he makes is that, great, we can send humans to moons, but A, we've been there, done that. But B, a lot of the stuff that you're going to learn on the moon, you just can't translate to Mars. It is a different environment. So going to the moon is great and all, but you're not going to be able to translate that knowledge to Mars.
Well, the first problem I have is Dr. Zubrin needs $1 trillion for his efforts. So it's a non-starter to begin with. And yeah, we're going to learn some things on the moon that don't translate to Mars. For example, the moon doesn't have any weather whatsoever, doesn't have an atmosphere really. So what becomes interesting is the rocks and the sand and dust is extremely sharp, is really fine, gets everywhere, and just really rips everything up.
Yeah.
Mars has weather. It has an atmosphere. It blows stuff around. Sharp edges get worn down into nice, smooth, round ones. So the sand is going to be more like it is on Earth. And so, yeah, so we have to learn how to deal with lunar regolith as opposed to Martian regolith. But so what? That's just more knowledge. Who cares? I mean, that doesn't take away from the fact that we're still learning how to live away from Earth. And you know, essentially in an atmospheric condition that's totally unbreathable. That applies both places.
Right.
You know, you know, whether you're trying to breathe in air that's, you know, equivalent of 100,000 foot here or, you know, out in space here, it doesn't matter. You're going to suffocate both ways.
It will not be pleasant.
You're going to die either way. So, you know.
So how is Masten Space Systems going to get humanity onto the moon? Well, because your NASA program doesn't necessarily mean humans on the moon, right? It just means things on the moon.
So the NASA program is whatever NASA can do to help us get to doing whatever on the moon we want to do.
Okay.
For our particular Catalyst program, we see NASA helping us develop the technologies to feed into 3 different vehicles. The first vehicle is just a basic lunar lander for a robot, and a fairly small one at that. The second one is sort of a scale up and sort of a middle, the middle step between that and our third vehicle. And our third vehicle is the one we've talked about on the show before, which is the convert a Centaur or other large cryogenic upper stage into a lander.
And actually, we had one of our guests ask, this is JIMM, he asked, question, has anything come of the Centaur to the moon concept, or is that idea dead now?
It is absolutely not dead now. There's been some difficulty in that. You know, I started talking about it right at the same time that politically in Washington saying moon or lunar was suicide. Mm-hmm. So we just sort of got quiet about it a little bit and just sort of, you know, worked under the radar a bit more with it. And but it's still going as a program. We're just going really slow on it right now. And we're starting to get a little more interest out of people. There's a little more talk about maybe going to the moon on the way back is a good idea, or on the way out is a good idea.
You've got these 3 vehicles in mind. Do they have interesting Masten Space Systems names yet that start with an X?
So they all start with an X, but they're not interesting names. It's XL1, XL2, and Zeus.
All right. So how long away are each vehicle? Like how long until we can actually start seeing these things on the moon? Not just being built, but like what's the time? What do your timelines look like?
Well, our timeline, you can actually look at the Space Act Agreement. Those are public documents actually. Says that we're going to do a terrestrial demonstration of the technologies in 2017.
Okay.
So that's really the only timeline we're going to give because these are all. It takes a lot of money to do this stuff, and you know we're a small company. We don't have a lot of money at any given time, so we poke away at it and keep going and get a lot done. But sometimes it takes longer than we hope.
You'll also fall into that. Well, we're just 2 years away. Oh, we're just 2 years away.
Yeah,
I don't want to do.
I don't want to do the 2 years away. 2 years away. 2 years away.
All right. So you've got these 3 vehicles. The first step, you've got basically small demonstrators. So like, yeah, we can get to the moon. We can move around. We can control it. We have a basic understanding there. The next vehicle, you've got it's larger now. You're able to put larger payloads down on the moon. You can kind of control that stuff. What are you gaining with that second vehicle knowledge-wise that you wouldn't be getting from the first vehicle?
So the second vehicle, the way we're envisioning it right now, is much more like the Centaur program, Zeus.
So much larger.
So it's not that size, but it is much larger. And the more important thing there is we're going from the traditional lander layout of the vehicle to suddenly it's sideways. You've got these huge tanks on one end of the vehicle, and then you've got this heavy payload on the other end, and there's some things that we have to work out with that, and a lot of engineering and experimental work that has to be done with that. So that's what we're going to be doing with the second vehicle.
Figure out what you don't know?
Figure out, yeah, exactly. Find out what all we don't know.
Yep, exactly. All right, cool. And then the Centaur stuff, I think we've covered fairly in detail before, but just a really quick recap of, you're putting humans on that. I mean, that's...
So eventually, yeah, we'll put humans on that, and that's, you take a Centaur, upper stage of the Atlas V, or you could use the upper stage, the cryogenic stage of the SLS or what have you. They all work. And you have these tanks, you have those engines. You put engines that fire sideways to the way the vehicle normally flies. And you tip it down and you land sideways on the surface. And then you keep your payload in a traditional position. That puts your payload right on the surface.
Can we do that on Mars too, right? Is this a lunar-only vehicle, or is this a Martian vehicle too?
I actually presented a paper at the IEEE conference last year that talked about doing this for Mars.
And atmosphere is not a concern? Because
the atmosphere is a concern, but that's what the paper is about. It's, okay, we looked at it and we said, okay, if you look at the design reference mission for going to Mars that NASA has, DRM 5.0 for those who are familiar with it, it talks about putting everything in the upper stage of and a fairing on the SLS. And then with a whole bunch of SLSs launching and putting everything together, then what you enter is the payload fairing from the SLS.
Now you make this, hang on, a whole bunch of SLSs launching. I mean, come on, you realize that is a little bit ridiculous.
DRM 5.0 is based on Ares 5 technically, not SLS, so Ares 5. And it has 12 of them in the non-nuclear option. With the nuclear propulsion option,
Dave!
It's in the reference mission. It goes down to a few less launches, but yeah, it's ridiculous.
All right, so SLS is, it's an awesome rocket, but it's an unrealistic rocket to use going to Mars at this stage, politically.
But that's what the design reference mission is, right?
All right.
It's a super heavy launch vehicle of 120 to 130 tons.
But can you do it without SLS? Can you do it with some other vehicle? Can you do it with a Delta IV Heavy? Can you do it
I can do it with Delta IV Heavies, Falcon 9s.
You just need a lot more of them then?
It's just how many do we use? Do we use 12 or do we use 20 or do we use 24? And it all depends on, what's the specifics of each vehicle.
All right, so we've got I wasn't paying attention to the chat room, and so this happened. All right, we've got Helldesk starts with, what would you put on a Falcon Heavy if you were donated a launcher to? So you're given a Falcon Heavy. You get the first Falcon Heavy demo flight. You can put anything you want on it. What are you putting on it?
Ooh, that's tough. I'm going to assume that there's a lot of stuff that I can't do that I want to do just because it's donated. So there's no modifications to the facilities.
I assume you can do anything you want. How about that?
All
right, let's try this again. You have got $1 billion sponsor who will pay for your rocket launch.
For Falcon Heavy, we're gonna test fly a Centaur with the moon kit.
So you tweak basically the upper stage and drop your Centaur on there, and
yep.
You make it really even taller.
Make it taller. Have all the stuff for landing on the moon. Probably won't land on the moon. I'd have to check the actual orbital mechanics of it, but yeah, we'll fly somewhere.
Let's see here. Would you take? So speaking of SpaceX, Mini Elon asks, would you take a chance to partner with SpaceX if they ask you to? In other words, if SpaceX were to ask, would you partner with them?
Oh, hell yes.
All right. There you go. That was an easy one. Yeah. Why would you say no? Yeah.
We partner with other launch organizations. Yeah. I don't.
Citizen Kane asks, why don't we do a space station with artificial gravity?
I don't know. I don't know why we wouldn't.
Would you?
Yeah, my architecture for going to Mars would involve basically spinning up a two system with a tether between to get a small amount of gravity.
Let's talk about your Mars architecture then. So you're going to need a bunch of launches to Mars. The number of launches depends upon the class of vehicle that you have.
So it's a whole bunch of launches into low Earth orbit. And we assemble all the pieces there. Amongst those pieces, there's basically the transfer propulsion system. Once you get into the transfer orbit, you can just drop those, let those go wherever. and then you use 2 of the Centaur-based spacecraft and a tether system, or I've also looked at putting thin, stiffer structures than tethers, and whatever. There's different trade-offs for each, and then spin them up. You can get just enough gravity that liquid acts like you would expect it to, not like it does in zero gravity or microgravity, but it actually starts pouring like a liquid and stuff. And I suspect that once you have those conditions, the human body isn't going to fall apart
as much, right? Because it's still not a full 1G, right?
Well, it's not a full 1G, but we just don't know now.
Sure.
What partial gravity is going to do to the human body.
But that's where you said going to the moon first, right? We can learn a lot of that on the moon.
So assuming that we learned at the moon that any partial gravity that's enough to make liquid behave the way the body expects it to, and therefore your body's chemistry isn't going to get weird. Because that's my understanding is what happens when you get into the really low microgravity situation, is that your body chemistry goes weird.
Okay.
Because you have things that are interacting differently. So if assuming that you don't have any problem because you have the chemistry working the same, then that's all you need.
So continuing on your Mars architecture, you've got your 2 Centaurs, you've got them tethered together, you've created some form of gravity.
You got a little bit of gravity.
You're swinging a centrifuge in them, and now you launch them over to Mars, essentially, right? They're swinging over to Mars, and then you enter a Martian orbit, I assume, of sorts.
So still debating whether to enter the Martian orbit or not, but you actually detach at that point, one of them. One of them enters a Martian orbit, definitely.
Okay.
The other one either enters orbit or just goes ahead and goes in for the landing.
Okay.
Direct insertion. Don't know which way to go yet with that. There's some trade-offs there. But you enter, you basically keep an aeroshell around it so that it actually will fly, or at least glide, or at least it falls like a rock, but it falls more like a shuttle type rock than a
falling brick. So it's the shuttle falling brick kind of thing.
Yeah, it's the shuttle falling brick thing. It's enough control that you can keep yourself pointed where you need to go, and maybe avoid some things. Like if you happen to get there at just the right time, you might have to do a little S-turn to get around Mount Olympus.
But you're not going to have a runway of any sort, so you're going to have to null out that forward motion.
So then we go back to the lunar architecture version, which has the engines pointed perpendicular to its axis, and you fire those right before you touch down, and that's NASA's had a big interest in supersonic retropropulsion. That's the point of their interest in it. They're trying to figure out, can they light an engine when they're supersonic, and because they can't slow down enough using atmospheric braking at Mars.
So I forgot the acronym. It's like supersonic something decelerator. It's the balloons that kind of blow up outside of the...
Yeah, they do that.
Would you look at something similar to that, or...
We don't need them.
Okay, so you're just gliding in using your aero surfaces.
You have the Centaur,
and
it carries hydrogen. It has a hydrogen tank, which means you have a really super lightweight structure carrying this huge volume of stuff. It's already a balloon. So you don't need the extra balloons popping out. Okay. Because now you've got this whole vehicle, and instead of thinking about, I've got this, denser than rock piece of electronics with a little bit of propulsion on it, we've got this huge thing with this huge propulsion section, and it's really light and fluffy, and it slows down great in the Martian atmosphere.
While it is big, you would living in that for the rest of your life, you would go stir crazy, right? I mean,
I'm not going there to settle, because I have no interest in. I'm not a pioneer.
All right,
I'm an explorer.
Are the people that are going under this architecture settlers or
explorers?
So then
you could have settlers eventually.
So you've landed, continuing the architecture. You've landed then on Mars. How do you get? Where's your fuel come from, and how do you get back?
So all the things we just described, you do that humanless first.
Okay, so you've got a couple Centaurs sitting there.
So then you'll have Centaurs with the ISRU equipment as the payloads.
I say Centaurs, but we mean Zeus's. Zeus's. Zeus-I.
So actually in the paper I call them Zeres.
Xares, okay.
Xares.
All right, so we have Xares.
Yeah. So, but they're carrying all the RSU equipment. So they're, and you send them one period beforehand, which for going from Earth to Mars is 26 months. So 26 months prior to sending the humans, you send a whole bunch of stuff to go to Mars and start collecting oxygen and hydrogen and whatnot, and basically, and you can check up on it.
So built off of NASA's plan, right? I mean,
It is. Because that's NASA's plan, and that part makes absolute sense.
Okay, yep.
And then you have all that stuff there. So you already have your return propellants have already been extracted from the Martian surface or the Martian atmosphere. You have water, you have propellants, you have everything you need, and you already know that before you send the astronauts out.
Right,
that
so you
things
know that
are good.
You've got a return system. The system gave you the green light, and now you can fly to Mars and set up your HABs. Would you set up?
And you know how we sent two of those things, and one of them stays in Martian orbit. That's how you're getting back.
So it's staying in Martian orbit. It's not landing.
Even if at the very last minute a meteor comes crashing into Mars and destroys your ISRU setup, just as you're about to enter Martian orbit, you choose to enter Martian orbit and go back on the remaining system rather than.
So you can abort what you have 9 minutes, right? I assume it's a 9 minute.
You have an abort. Well, so yeah, the way we're coming in takes a little bit longer. So there's only 20-minute period where you cannot abort.
But once you've entered into your final entry, descent, landing sequence, you've committed at that point.
At that
but
point,
up until that last 20 minutes, you can abort at any time until you commit to your entry, descent, and landing. Cool. So then, and that just stays in orbit no matter what. So, and then you're going from the surface up to your vehicle and then over, or you're going from the surface all the way back to Earth.
You're going up to the surface. You're gonna dock with the other vehicle,
and then you're taking that,
and then you're gonna take that back, or you can take the. It doesn't matter at that point which one you take back. They're both very similar. The only questions are which one's in better shape, really.
How real is all of this, right? Because we could talk about space all day long. We can have great ideas, but at the end of the day, it takes money, it takes time, and it takes talent. You have to have all three of those things.
I think I have some of the talent. I would like to think I have the talent. The money is difficult, but I think I have a path for the money.
Okay.
And again, the technology, it's really about having, do you have a path? I've got a map laid out. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about what the details are, but, I have a map. I have a path that I think will work. Now, who knows? Maybe that place where they're the elevation lines are getting a little too close there. Maybe that's a cliff instead of just a steep hill. I don't know. Maybe that could stop me, but
you have autonomous. Well, I see what you. Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's do these last couple of questions, and then we'll let you go, and we'll get into some space news. So this one comes from at FL Space Report, which is probably very pertinent to them, which is, do you still plan on operations at Cape Canaveral Spaceport? Moon Express has now occupied the pad once modified for Masten. I believe that's Slick 37, Space Launch Complex 37? 36? 30-something, I don't remember.
Yeah, I think it's 36. We're still hoping to. Obviously, we've had some difficulties. There's just lots of difficulties there, so still working on that. But yeah, at the moment, it makes sense. The Moon Express guys are ready to do something out there, so yeah, they should go ahead and do something. But hopefully, we'll be able to come out there and do something in the not too distant future.
All right, our last question. This comes from Mr. Hickle, at Mr. Hickle on Twitter. He asks, I notice you use open source platforms such as Adreno and BeagleBone. Do you use open source code as well?
The open source that we use Linux for a portion of our flight software. We use Linux extensively on our ground software. Python is perhaps our software team's favorite language. So yes, we use a lot of open source software. Unfortunately, we can't make our code open source. For
That's
example,
an ITAR issue, or is it?
well, for example, GPL is a null and void would be a null and void license agreement because of ITAR. There are legal restrictions on what we can do with our code, so therefore, things like GPL become impossible to license under.
So for those who don't know, ITAR being a U.S. law for U.S.-based aerospace companies, it basically says you build weapons.
Yep.
And the Department of Defense restricts what you are allowed to then share with anyone outside of the United States. It also restricts who you can bring in to work on your project. And in my personal opinion, it's a bit of a pain in the butt. But
it's more than just a little pain in the butt.
I'm being nice. I'm being nice.
I'm not going to be nice about it. It really, really, really sucks. And it does not even obtain. It does not do what it's supposed to do. It does not protect the American citizen in any way.
But it makes them feel warm and fuzzy.
You know.
Actually, how
does it feel warm and fuzzy when you realize that your brother's out of a job, or whoever's out of a job because, well, GPS units, all of our GPS units are imported. Why? Because no one can build a GPS unit here in the United States without violating ITAR if they try selling it elsewhere. So what do? We have to buy all of our GPS units from non-US companies.
It seems like it's one of those big things that's trying to undergo reform, and it's very slowly making some reforms, it seems like, but I don't think it's going to go away overnight.
The greatest bug and the greatest feature of the United States government is the fact that we can't do anything simply, easily, and quickly.
That's by design.
That is by design. That is both its greatest bug and its greatest feature.
And then you had actually mentioned, before we go into break, you had mentioned, outsourcing jobs, but I think you guys are hiring as well. So if there's someone watching right now that's maybe really good at X, Y, or Z in aerospace, who are you looking forward to bring in?
Right now, we're really looking to expand our software engineering and guidance, navigation, control, avionics type team. That team, we've also got an opening for electrical engineer, and I think we've got some other openings. At any rate, get your resumes in. Masten Space, Masten.aero is the website, and there should be a tab somewhere in there for employment, and it'll have a place for you to upload your resume to.
Awesome. Hey, and I don't think I actually introduced you. You're the founder and CTO,
yes,
correct, of Masten Space Systems. So, Dave, thank you for coming on. You're in studio, so I'm going to force you to come back in After Dark.
Okay.
And for those of you who are watching live, stay tuned. After Dark will be up in a couple of segments. Otherwise, if you are a patron of Tomorrow at the Patreon Plus level, you'll get After Dark as soon as it's available. Everyone else, it'll be available in 4 weeks. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, Space Mike will be bringing us our space news this week. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Hello, everyone. I am Space Mike, and we have a lot of cool things to talk about this week. But before we get started, we wanted to thank the producers of Patreons who donated $5 or more to Tomorrow and helped to enable this part of the segment of the show. And for more information on how to become a Patreon member, go to patreon.com/TMRO. And so we have some very cool things. Just today, the United Launch Alliance successfully launched a Delta II mission, launching the SMAP, or Soil Moisture Active Passive Observatory, to do lots of cool science and find out information to help weather predictions and to also look at different crop yields in the future. And there was a very cool launch of the Delta rocket this morning. It was around 6 o'clock Pacific time, and it was a beautiful night launch. And for this configuration of the Delta II, this was the 7320 configuration. The first digit represents the series of deltas, either being a 6 or a 7. The second digit, in this case the 3, indicates the number of boosters. And the third digit represents which second stage was used for this mission. In this case, it was the Aerojet AJ-10 engine powering the second stage of the Delta II rocket. And for other configurations, like on the 6000 series, they use a different engine, the TR-201, and the AJ-10 was chosen for this particular mission. The third digit donates what the third stage usually is, and on this mission it did not need a third stage. However, they usually use solid rocket boosters in order to do that. It's a very cool mission. Night launches are always beautiful, and hopefully the SMAP is going to get lots of data and help to do lots of weather predictions and help to prevent, or at least give early warning for certain disasters like floods and tsunamis and ways that our soil is being affected. So that was a very cool mission, and this is very cool footage of the deployment of the satellite right here. Something that you don't see too often from United Launch Alliance, but always beautiful to see. In other news, SpaceX has released new animation footage of their Falcon Heavy, which is going to be launching from Vandenberg Air Force Base. And with this animation, they are demonstrating what their future plan is for reusability of not only the first stage, but the booster stages as well. Right now, SpaceX has only been using or trying to get certification to land one Falcon 9 first stage at either Cape Canaveral or Vandenberg. And there would need more certification in order to land both the first stage and the side boosters, which is demonstrated in this video. Very cool. Very cool. Unlike previous animation videos, they noticeably did not have the second stage returning back to Earth. And as we can assume from the launch pad, or rather the landing pads in that video, that they would have all three of the stages of the Falcon Heavy, of the first stages, the first stage and the boosters, as well as the second stage and a fifth pad for the return of Dragon B2s, the crewed version. So that would be very cool if they do that in the future. And speaking of the crewed version, SpaceX is currently working on the actual vehicle that is going to be doing the pad abort test using the new Draco thrusters to be able to enable abort of the Dragon capsule in order to escape from a Falcon rocket that's crewed if anything was to happen to that rocket. And there are two parts of this certification that they need in order to continue to progress with the crew Dragon program, and that is a pad abort test and an in-flight abort test. And with an in-flight abort test, it originally was scheduled for late 2014, but the pad abort is going to be happening in the next month or so, and it's unclear whether they're going to rapidly try to attempt the in-flight abort test, because that would require a Falcon 9 stage in order to do that. With that, I would assume that there probably will be some sort of attempt to land the Falcon 9 first stage, either on the automated drone ship in the Atlantic, or I'm not sure if they would be able to get certification in time in order to land that back nearby the launch pad. Either way, that mission will be able to, the goal, whether or not they attempt any sort of landing of the first stage, is to prove that the Dragon capsule has the in-flight ability to be able to abort and pull away from the rocket safely. And so that was very cool for SpaceX. In other news, some kind of bad news for Virgin Galactic, in the sense that the New Mexican government, in the sense that a senator has proposed a bill to sell Spaceport America. And what they would use the sell of that for is to repay ahead of schedule a lot of the bonds that were used in order to fund the building of Spaceport America. And they would also cancel tax incentives that were in 2 separate counties of New Mexico in order to fund this, and they would rescind those extra taxes that are put on those citizens. And essentially, Virgin Galactic might even lose their lease. Of course, SpaceX has a deal to do test flights of their reusability systems from there. And there have been lots of sounding rockets and other small rockets that have been launched there. Notably, Up Aerospace has done a lot of work there. So there are other tenants that can still have need and would be able to use Spaceport America. But if this bill passes through and the New Mexican state government decides to sell Spaceport America, who knows what the future would hold for that. And it's possible that Virgin Galactic and their investors might even buy it outright. However, with all the delays and everything that's been going on, I don't think that is a good option right now, but who knows what the possibilities could be there. But something would need to happen if Virgin Galactic intends to continue to use that spaceport. In other news, some other kind of bad news, but also good news that helps us to learn lots of news, is at the Mars Desert Research Facility, there was a fire. They had a fire in the greenhouse, which is that gray canister that you can see, that kind of silver canister that you can see off to the right of the main habitat, and destroyed a lot of things. And they were able, what they had to do is they had to use all of the fire extinguishers that were aboard this research station in order to put the fire out. And as you can see from the damage there, that if this had happened on Mars, this would have been a disaster. This would have been a catastrophe. They probably wouldn't have been able to put out the fire. The exposed atmosphere would have forced them to seal themselves in the habitat. And what happened with the crew that was at this research station was that they ended up having to go and stay at a nearby hotel for after this fire happened, because they lived off of the greenhouse. The point of this research station is it has a completely closed environment as much as possible in order to learn the lessons that we need to learn for living on habitats on Mars or even the moon. And so if this had happened on Mars, this would have been completely catastrophic. The food would have wiped out, and it might even have wiped out the entire station and the crew if this had actually been on Mars at the time. So even though this is kind of bad news, there's lots of things to learn and lots of contingencies in order to prepare for. And me personally, I like what Dave Masten brought up earlier in the show, where he talked about that we need to work on in situ resource utilization in order to do the type of things like making sure we're always stocked up on fire extinguishers. So another thing that we need to worry about, and lots of lessons can be learned from that. So thank you very much for joining me for Space News. We're going to take a short break, and then we'll be back for answering questions from the community.
We've always looked to the stars. They guide us, give us comfort, help us find our way. We see ourselves out there. When we look up, it inspires us. And we long for something we don't yet know. We yearn to go there. So, we venture forth.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other thing, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
The exploration of space will go ahead, whether we join in it or not.
Many think we stopped exploring. But we know our journey didn't end. We've only just begun.
Orion is functioning perfectly at this point.
Come with us and explore tomorrow.
Oh, I need to fix that. Welcome back to Tomorrow. I am now joined by Carrie Ann Higginbotham, our co-host. Welcome back.
Thank you.
You've been off in the room listening to everything that was going on. Also, I wanted to give a congratulations to Space Mike, because doing the news is hard. Doing the news solo is extremely
So much harder.
hard. That's why we have two of us here to do it, to bounce back and forth. It's much easier when you can do that. And he did a fantastic job.
Really
so
good job.
Kudos to Space Mike for making that happen. And we threw that on him last minute because we needed to reset the set after Dave was out here. Also, I wanted to say thank you to all of the patrons of Tomorrow who helped make this specific segment of this episode happen. The people on the screen right now are our Patreon Plus subscribers. These are people who have contributed at least $3 to this specific episode. You can see it's color-coded. You got black, those are the, the premier members. Blue, those are the producers. And orange, those are our Patreon Plus subscribers. Like I said, $3 or more, and they're going to get a copy of After Dark as soon as it's available, and we're going to be bringing Dave Masten back out. We've also got our Patreon subscribers. These are people who've contributed $1 to this specific episode. $1 is about the cup of coffee. So for $1 per week, or just giving up one coffee, you can help fund a show about space. Every single dollar helps. We are so close to our next goal of $1,000 per episode, and we keep funding all of this money back into the show. You can find more information on how you can become a citizen of tomorrow over at patreon.com/TMRO. You guys are the lifeblood of the show. Thank you so much for contributing week after week. And speaking of, we're all about our community. We love you guys. Obviously we bring your questions and we're here for you. And so that was a little cheesy, I know. But we've got comments from our last week's show. Most of these, so I keep trying to have everyone do this on Twitter. And I do this because it's easier, because then you're limited to 140 characters, so we don't have these long run-on comments.
Right.
But also it's better for discovery, right? So people are like, oh, what is this hashtag TMRO? And maybe they can find the show. Whereas if you comment on YouTube, it's stuck inside of that YouTube episode. People aren't going to be able to find it. And you guys really don't like that. Like all of the comments this week are from YouTube. So I will bend to your will. If you really want to comment on YouTube, we'll bring them back on the show. I hear you guys loud and clear. I will say I do prefer the comments on the social media networks, and I will put priority on Twitter. But if you feel you must comment on YouTube, and always feel free to comment anywhere you want. But if you want them associated with the show, Twitter is the best way to do it. It really is. It helps us a lot. But if you can't, that's cool too. So. Comments from YouTube. This one comes from Callisto4813.
Who says, rovers and robotic explorers keep the energy going and the dreams alive between manned missions.
And this is in regards to last week's show, Riding with Robots. You did a fantastic interview. And yeah, absolutely. I think we need both robots and manned missions, because you can do a lot more with manned missions than you can with robots, but it takes a lot longer to get the manned missions. I don't want to say, I hate saying manned missions, human missions, right? What a silly word. So human missions out into the cosmos. It just takes longer because we are far more frail than a robot. But a robot is way, way, way slower at gathering science than a human is. So you need them both, right? They work together. Next up.
From Nightlight ABCD. I got it. Anyway, robotic missions do the real science work, and manned missions are the very, very expensive showboating.
You know, I kind of. So human-rated missions, or humans in the cosmos,
Yes.
are extremely expensive,
Yes.
way more expensive than the robotic missions.
Yes.
But when you look at the science being done on the moon and all the regolith that we've brought back, a majority of that came from not our robotic missions, and there have been quite a few robotic missions to our moon. Those came back from Apollo, the manned mission, the human missions. Well, no, that one was manned missions back in the late 60s, early 70s.
Yes.
There's a ton of science. There were even entire, like Apollo 17 were scientists, or became scientists, and a scientist that were up on the moon to study the moon. And there's more science done with humans and the human-based stuff that we were able to do than those robots. That's not to say that robots are useless. They are not. But let's take another example. Mars, we lost Spirit. Hey guys, we lost Spirit, right? Yes. Yeah. If we wanted to fix one of the, like, go out and like uncover it and dust off its photovoltaic solar panels,
Right.
a human could just walk up to it and pluck it, and you're done. But we can't do that out there with robots today. Rosetta, Comet 67P, bounced on the comet, landed in a dark area. If a human was up there, it would just move slightly. The robot, right? That's all you need to do, right? Just, oh, I'm in the shade. I'm going to make a real-time decision and go, now I'm not in the shade anymore.
Right.
A robot, we had to scramble to get as much science as we could before the robot died,
Sure.
which, by the way, stellar performance by
Amazing
the
job.
European Space Agency to go, we've got a problem. How much science can we get quickly?
Right.
And they did. They got as much as they could. But imagine how much more science we could get if a human was up there.
Right.
This is not to say that there aren't drawbacks to humans too, because there certainly are, but they go hand in hand. If you want lots of science, it's not going to be from the robots, it's going to be from the humans. If you want the precursor science and just kind of figure out a little bit of the X, Y, and Z, that's going to be robots. But the other thing to note is you're going to always need those robots because humans have limited vision. We can't see into infrared, we can't see radiation, we just can't detect. Our bodies are incapable of these things.
Right.
We will always need robots, and that's okay. Anyhow, there you go. I'm off my soapbox.
Okay.
I can just see. I don't know why. I feel like Dave is just in there in the green room going, and now he's going green room.
I was just saying that.
All right, next up, you have a green room.
Right.
Next.
Yeah. Jorben van der Eek
Van der Eek. Yeah. I just saw it say that. All right.
says, for me, the only thing stopping more awesome missions to space is money. Pretty sad some round copper pieces of metal can stop humanity from reaching beyond.
I don't actually think it's money. I think it's a will to go. If it were simply money, it would be fixed.
Well, I think it's a catch-22,
Okay.
though, right? Because if there was the will to go, then we can siphon the money from over here to over there in order to, right? Like,
We have the will to go in the Apollo era, and from 0 to moon, we did it in under 10 years.
right. But I guess that's my point, though, because you're right. Because money's not an issue, but the money is being spread out across many other things. It's going to other places.
But if we decided,
but
tomorrow,
if we had
this is a
stronger
priority.
will
We
to go, then we
let's-
would take the money from over here, we would put it over here, and then we would make it go.
or other people would just Well, I mean, now we're getting into slight utopian version that isn't real, but
Sure.
let's say there's a catastrophe that's about to happen,
Yes.
and there's a giant meteor coming towards Earth, and it's going
Right.
to wipe out all life as we know it.
Sure.
Maybe we don't care about money anymore. It's the will to go that stops us, right? So suddenly now we all, like, collectively don't want to be here anymore,
Right.
Because it's going to be a really bad day.
I think we're saying the same things.
Okay.
Okay.
There you go.
Yay.
Finally. Are we fighting on air? Is that what's going on?
No, we're not. We're saying the
Awkward.
same thing in a different way.
I guess what I'm saying is you don't have to have money.
Right. Okay. Well, sure. Yep. We'll go with that.
Okay. All right. All right. Finally.
From Dutch
I made
Universe.
this super awkward and uncomfortable. You're welcome, Internet.
Appreciate that. From Dutch Universe says, would be awesome if you could get Neil deGrasse Tyson on the show about Star Talk or something.
Yeah, actually, I don't disagree. I'd love to argue with him and debate with him over governments being
As opposed to me, for once.
Now you have made it super awkward. You're welcome, internet. I completely lost my track. I'd love to debate him about the idea that governments are the ones that need to explore the moon and Mars, and historically they're the only ones that have done it. I will argue that it's actually a combination of government and commercial enterprise that have done the greatest exploration, and that's exactly what we've got going on with new space right now. If you look at Masten Space Systems, for example, if he were to team up with the backing and funding of, say, I don't know, maybe NASA, and NASA said, hey, here's $5 billion, get us to the moon. Would you like that, Dave?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, right, I mean, imagine what Dave could do with $5 billion getting us to the moon versus what NASA could do with $5 billion towards getting us to the moon. I guarantee you, like NASA is a whole entity.
Yes.
I guarantee you, I will bet $1 on this, that Dave could probably get us all the way to the moon or darn close, and NASA would have a paper rocket, like a rocket on paper that, you know, they spent a lot of money to validate that when we do build it, it will work, but that's as far as they are.
Right.
So that's, I think, the difference between the two. You need that partnership between the two in order to accelerate these things. Now, private space can still do it on its own if the government decides it doesn't want to help.
Right.
But it's going to go way, way, way faster and way more efficiently if we team up together and do this as, you know, for the betterment of humanity. I know, blah, 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 utopian society. I'd love to bring him on and debate that with him. And we might actually end up just agreeing immediately, or he might go, like, you're an idiot and here's why. But he costs like $20,000 to bring on, and we just don't have that kind of money. We should create a goal. We'll create a Patreon goal. When we make some obscene amount per episode, like 10 grand per episode, which I think is achievable someday in the future, just not today. We'll work on bringing on guests like that, where we'll be like, all right, you know, it costs us 20 grand per whatever, we'll bring on one per month or whatever it happens to be. That would be kind of awesome.
That would be very awesome.
So, all right, that's our show for this week. I'd like to thank everyone so much for watching. This has been a fun episode.
Yeah.
After Dark is up next. Next week, we're going to have from the X Prize Foundation, Leo Camacho.
Yes, Leo Camacho.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't remember his last name suddenly.
Leo
Camacho from the X Prize Foundation is going to be on to talk about all the cool stuff that X Prize is working on, with kind of a focus on the Google Lunar X Prize. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
A lot of fun.
All right, everyone watching live, stay tuned. After Dark is up next. Otherwise, if you're a Patreon Plus subscriber, head on over to Patreon to log in to watch the After Dark episode, because it's going to be awesome with Dave. It always is. It may or may not be space related. Oh, we're going to show you a cool mug that you can't buy anymore from Disney that's unrelated to space, but it's going to be epic. And for everyone else, thank you so much for watching. After Dark will be available in 4 weeks.